A fingerprint check-in being tried at the 24-hour fitness. Again, that's being reported out of San Francisco. 24-hour fitness is a chain. They've got them here in Portland. Let's see if they roll out the fingerprint checking. A great article about a guy, and posted it to InfoWars, who went to one of the Rock the Bells concerts, hip-hop show. And he wrote a piece called Microchipping the Hip-Hop Community at a show that had KRS-One and Immortal Technique. They had RFID cards that you would trade your money in for. You couldn't use money within the shows. You had to use these RFID smart cards. Microchipping the hip-hop community, getting people used to the idea. We have the U.S. scanning Afghan inmates for biometric database. More on that from Danger Room. An amazing story by way of Examiner.com. An explosive court case, this covered by Deborah Dupree. Secretly forced brain implants. It's a two-part series about the forced implantation of James Walbert, a Wichita, Kansas resident and inventor. This is far too long of a story to go into, but there seems to be proof, or at least it's been put on the record in a court, that this guy is what's referred to as a targeted individual. And it only gets worse. And again, we constantly reference the sci-fi and the predictive programming, and that's why we cover these kind of things. Pre-crime technology to be used in the District of Criminals. Law enforcement agencies in D.C. have begun to use technology that they say can predict when crimes will be committed and who will commit them before they actually happen. The Minority Report like pre-crime software developed by Richard Burke, professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Thanks again, Pennsylvania. Previous incarnations of the software already being used in Baltimore and Philly were limited to predictions of murders by and among parolees and offenders on probation. But a new report from ABC News, however, notes that the latest version to be implemented in D.C. can predict other future crimes as well. When a person goes on probation or parole, they are supervised by an officer. The question that officer has to answer is, what level of supervision do you provide? Burke told ABC News, intimating that the program could have a bearing on the length of sentences and/or bail amounts. The technology sifts through a database of thousands of crimes and uses algorithms and different variables such as geographic location, criminal records, and ages of previous offenders to come up with predictions of where, when, and how a crime could possibly be committed and by who. The program operates without any direct evidence that crimes will be committed. It simply takes data sets and computes possibilities. We're going to jump down and again remind you the story that we covered several months ago. Google, no, not even several months ago, a couple of weeks ago, Google and In-Q-Tel. In-Q-Tel being the investment arm of the Central Intelligence Agency. They gave startup money to Google. They gave startup money to Facebook. Google and In-Q-Tel have recently injected a sum of up to $10 million each into a company called Recorded Future, which uses analytics to scour Twitter accounts, blogs, and websites for all sorts of info, which is used to assemble actual real-time dossiers on people. The company describes its analytics as the ultimate tool for open-source intelligence and says it can also predict the future. Those detached from any kind of moral reality will say, if you got nothing to hide, then what's the problem with being scanned for pre-crime? If it keeps us all safe from murderers, rapists, and terrorists, I'm all for it. How far towards a literal technological Big Brother police state will we slip before people wake up to that fact? I guess everything we're seeing and talking about right now says pretty damn far. U.S. Homeland Security to expand secure communities nationwide. This coming from the epochtimes.com. DHS plans to broaden its secure communities program nationwide by 2013, according to a DHS release administered by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the largest investigative agency within Homeland Stupidity. Secure Communities aims to identify and possibly remove illegal immigrants with criminal histories from the U.S. This was started in October 2008 and was expanded on August 10th of this year to all 25 counties that line the southwest border of the U.S. secure communities, more selectively enforced Band-Aid on a gunshot wound that's being done. And on all these levels and all these things that we talk about, it's essentially, unfortunately, the story is always the same. These things are happening on purpose. They're being let to happen on purpose. They're sometimes being made to happen on purpose. And they're being used to further agendas. The destruction of the economy, the destruction of sovereignty, the destruction of just the heart and spirit of what we all thought and think it means or meant to be an American, as they slowly turn up the heat. Scientists simulate terror attack on Boston subway. We've reported similar stories to this before. They've even done this decades ago. I believe it was called Operation Big City. But we get this story from WHDH-TV. Authorities released a non-toxic, odorless gas at 20 MBTA stations last Friday. The study will show how the gas can spread through the train cars and tunnels of the oldest subway system in the country in a terror attack situation. Homeland Security is trying to figure out how an airborne attack might spread. As well they should, because it always seems that whenever we have some kind of event, some kind of attack, it connects back to the very agencies who would have not only the means, motive, and opportunity, but the track record. They create the germs that somehow get out. They're running the military operations that somehow go live. It's all just a coincidence. It's just the whole accidental, coincidental theory of history. New Logan Airport, speaking of Boston, new Logan Airport searches blasted, TSA tests frisky new policy. Logan Airport security just got more up close and personal as federal screeners launched a more aggressive palms first side down body search technique that has renewed the debate over privacy versus safety. The new procedure, already being questioned by the ACLU, replaces the TSA's former back of the hand pat down. Boston is only one of 2 cities in which the new touchy-feely frisking is being implemented as a test before a planned national rollout. The other unfortunate city is Las Vegas. Returning to Danger Room, Pain Ray, rejected by the U.S. military, is now ready to blast Los Angeles prisoners. Inmates of the Pitchess Detention Center, watch your step. If you get out of line, you may get blasted with an invisible heat ray. And you gotta love how all these articles kind of write it in a tongue-in-cheek way. Oh, it's all so funny. The jail's energy weapon is a small-scale version of the active denial system, the experimental crowd control device that the U.S. military brought to Afghanistan and then quickly shipped back home after questions mounted about the wisdom of blasting locals with a beam that momentarily puts them in agony. The pain weapon seemed at odds with the military's efforts to appear more humane and measured in the eyes of the Afghan populace. Now, does this article go on to mention? No, of course not. Why would they mention that we've already rolled out active denial pain ray systems during the G20 in Pennsylvania last year? They tested out on foreign lands, as they always talk about, oh, this is just for the terrorists, oh, this is just for them, oh, we're not listening to you. They're tested out on them and wheel it around on us. More on this from thesignal.com, Bring on the Heat, where a writer experiences being blasted with a pain ray. And again, always just putting the human face on it. Oh, if that reporter can, he'll probably go, oh, god damn, that's okay. Whew. But as we wrap up these amazing, unbelievable, crushing police state updates, and we wake and find we're living in Oceania, Germany to roll out ID cards with embedded RFID. More on that from ibtimes.com. China's 13-day traffic jam stretched 62 miles. If being in a car in a traffic jam for 13 days isn't a police state, then I don't know what is. Our final note comes from AmericanFreePress.net with an article from Jeffrey Smith, where tied into, again, this coming race war, class war, border war, left versus right, black versus white. We're all lunging at each other's throats. Mexican police to patrol in Staten Island. Apparently, a series of events which has caused wide notice and a storm of protests. The government of Mexico, through its consulate in New York, in the United Nations, has announced it will begin patrolling the New York City borough of Staten Island to safeguard its nationals there. The actions of Mexico come after a series of incidents the Mexican government terms bias attacks. Now, we're going to get into some of the things, but a few, and actually I shouldn't speak to the severity of some of these crimes because I don't really actually know, and we don't have time to go into it right now. But I'm sure it was a couple attacks and a couple of beatings. Meanwhile, the widespread murder and mayhem and death and destruction that goes on in Mexico, with the scores and hundreds of people being killed by the week, literally. These are the things that are going to bring in a North American Union.